Well, we'll start like we always do with a little bit of centering meditation. So please make your way into a comfortable seated position and then placing your hands on your lap, just closing your eyes and settling in to your practice. Really touching base with your foundation, whatever that is for you. Your base of support, feeling anchored to the ground beneath you. And then from that point, drawing your awareness slowly upwards, becoming aware of sensations arising in the body. And giving yourself a moment to just notice how you feel right now. And then when your attention gets all the way to the top of your head, see if you can just soften the skin of the face. In particular, the space in between the eyebrows. And drop shoulders away from the ears. And whatever has transpired in your day leading up to this moment, we just hit pause to allow ourselves to use this time to deepen our breath and our meditation practice. The beauty is nothing else is important right now. We can just totally focus on our own practice. And bringing your palms to touch and generating some friction and some heat. To place your warm palms over your closed eyes for 3 deep restorative breaths. Big inhale. And with your exhale, open mouth. Again, inhaling deeply. And exhale, open mouth. Last one, inhaling. And exhale completely. Let the breath go. Remove your hands from your eyes. And then settling in. Wonderful. So for today's practice, it's a summation of the 3-part yogic breath. So we started by learning how to move the diaphragm by allowing the belly to be soft, to move forward on the inhale, and to draw back towards the spine on the exhale. And then we worked on allowing the rib cage to move laterally, to expand outward and upwards. And then the last part is we worked on just letting the sternum lift at the very top of the breath. We've played a little bit with some breath ratios. Last week we did box breathing, which is an even count, inhale, pause, exhale, pause. For this week, what I want to do is get more deep practice of 3-part yogic breath, but to start to work on breath holds a little bit more. So what happens when you hold your breath at the top of the inhale? It does have a calming effect on the nervous system. But conversely, when you hold your breath at the bottom of the exhale, you have this feeling like, oh, I want to take an inhale. And it has an excitatory effect on the nervous system. It triggers a mini fight or flight. If we can balance those two, we find an equilibrium, a calm, focused state of attention. That's the idea of box breathing or even ratio breathing. But for today, what I'd like to do is just explore what is your comfortable length of breath hold. This is going to be different for everybody. Now, one caveat before we get into it is for some people, holding the breath just doesn't feel good. It can trigger a feeling of anxiety or panic. So please feel free to skip this. If you're starting to do it and it doesn't feel great, just return to your normal breath rhythm. And then we can try maybe on the next cycle. The idea, though, if you can master this, is to be able to hold the breath to allow that sensation of like, okay, I want to take a breath now, and to be able to maintain that steady, calm focus. So there are a couple of ways to do this. First of all, we start in small, manageable increments, and we elongate the breath hold over time. And two, we create an internal mantra. So the word mantra, that comes from the yoga word, but really what we're talking about is just a phrase, a sentence that you can repeat to yourself silently that has an effect on your emotional state, and by that extension, your behavior. So we're going to start first with the mantra of calm. So silently reciting to ourselves while we hold the breath, the word calm, calm, calm. And we're just going to explore if that makes it possible to hold the breath longer. So first, let's practice our 3-part yogic breath again, just to get the entire abdominal cavity working in unison. We'll start first with some belly breathing. So we'll take one hand. And I apologize, the only place where my Wi-Fi is working right now is in my bed. So don't judge me for having pillows behind my back. With the belly breath, I'm going to have my hand on my belly. And with the inhale, I allow the belly to expand into my hand. With the exhale, the belly draws back towards the spine. Then rib cage breathing. With my inhale, the rib cage can expand laterally. With the exhale, it will draw in. And then the last part of our 3-part yogic breath, the sternum, the breastbone. With my inhale, after belly, after ribs, there's just going to be this tiny lift here. And then everything reverses on the exhale. So sternum drops, rib cage pulls in, belly draws back. That's the idea. Now, I had a conversation recently with George explaining to me something that I didn't know, and I have to apologize profusely for my ignorance and ask for your feedback. What George explained is that in some cases with paralysis, you might not have the capacity to expand the belly. And so if that is the case, we just want to start from the lowest part that you have influence over. And we think of the breath like a wave. So the wave moves from the bottom to the top, and then on the exhale, it goes from the top to the bottom. So in whatever way that works for you, we're going to practice inflating from the bottom up and then exhaling, deflating from the top down. So let's enter into it again with a comfortable upright posture. Closing your eyes. And together we'll empty the lungs. With your hand on your belly, inhale, belly expands. And exhale, belly draws in towards spine. We'll do this a few more times. Inhaling belly. And exhale, emptying. So again, inhaling into that lowest point of influence. And then exhaling. A couple more times. And maintaining eyes closed. Now please taking your hands to the next level up. So hand on a rib cage. And we start our breath, emptying the lungs. Inhaling belly, ribs. Exhaling, ribs draw in. Belly draws in. Inhaling from the bottom through the middle. Exhaling from the middle to the bottom. A few more cycles like this, inhaling and exhaling. One more cycle of breath. And then just relaxing for a moment. So the last part of the sequence will add the sternum. Remembering the sternum lifts really as a byproduct of the rib cage expanding outwards and upwards to its full capacity. We're going to do this full part yogic breath just straight out of our centering meditation. Again, preparing, and then all together we empty the lungs to inhale from the bottom through the middle, and last thing, the top, the sternum lifts. Exhale, sternum drops, rib cage pulls in, belly draws in. Inhale from the bottom to the top. Exhaling from the top to the bottom. And continuing, please, using your own unique lung capacity to guide your timing. And if you've lost the rhythm, that's okay. This is a reminder. We're breathing from the bottom to the top on the inhale. And then we are emptying the breath from the top to the bottom on the exhale. For just a few more cycles of breath. And now returning to your normal breath. I'm just taking a moment to notice if the three-part yogic breath has changed how you feel. For good or for bad, just noticing what that is. And then opening your eyes. So now we're going to do a little bit of stretching. We'll do a three-part yogic breath again, one more quick cycle. before we move into breath holds. Now the first stretch, and pardon me, I'm just going to creatively reposition here so that you can see me better. There we go. Okay. So first stretch. There we go. We're just going to take the hand to the ear and then create space in the side of the neck. And with this inhale coming up through center, and then exhale to the opposite side. Same thing, creating a little space in the side of the neck. And coming back through center and turning your nose in line with one knee, taking the hand to the back of the head, and then just drawing your chin down towards one side of your rib cage. You can deepen the stretch by extending the opposite arm down into the side and maybe going even further by externally rotating that arm. And with this inhale, we come back to neutral. We're going to take the opposite arm across the center of the body and then draw it in towards you, stretching the back of that shoulder. And then we're going to get fancy. So taking that same arm, bending it at 90 degrees, we take the opposite arm underneath, around, and then maybe the fingertips will come to the wrist, or perhaps the palms will connect. That's not necessary though. If you get the rep, then you can extend your hands away from you and just round your upper back. You may feel a stretch in between your shoulder blades as you do this. This is called Garudasana, eagle pose. It's like an eagle wrapping its wings around the body. Another awesome place where you might feel the stretch is here, down the length of the upper arm. And we'll inhale, unwind, and we'll repeat that whole sequence opposite side. So the nose turns in line with the other knee, hand to the back of the head, draw the chin towards the outer rib cage as you extend your opposite hand down towards the floor. And we're going to release, coming up. We're going to take the opposite arm across the center of the body and then draw it in towards you to get a stretch around the shoulder, down the length of the outer part of the upper arm. And it's valuable to notice, is one side tighter than the other? It's pretty common. It's valuable information for understanding how we're training the body and where we might need to focus our attention to create balance. And taking that same arm at 90 degrees, the opposite arm goes under and then wraps around for fingertips maybe to touch the wrist, or perhaps palms to touch. And if you get that, we extend the arms up and forward as we round the spine. And really you're just letting gravity pull your upper arms forward and down, and that increases the stretch across the upper back. And then inhaling up and unwinding for a deep side body stretch. So for this, both arms are going to go up. You're going to interlace index finger and thumb around one wrist, up and then over, so that you're stretching the whole length of your side body from that wrist all the way down to your hip bone. Now, stretching the side body, that's especially beneficial for increasing our breath capacity. These are muscles that are attached to all of the ribs that we're stretching right now. And inhaling up through center, changing the interlacing to go to the other side. And then coming back to center. And we're ready for round 2 of our 3-part yogic breath. So again, we just take a moment to settle into our comfortable upright posture. And closing the eyes, I'm just going to guide you through one round. And then again, it's key that you just allow yourself to find your optimal rhythm. Inhaling from the bottom to the top and exhaling top to bottom. So we start by emptying the lungs, inhaling bottom to top, exhaling top to bottom, and please continue. And then just returning to your normal breath, opening your eyes. You may have noticed that post-stretch, the 3-part yogic breath just felt a little bit easier, maybe not. I find that the stretch allows all of the muscles around my torso to relax, and this wave-like quality of the breath just becomes easier. So now exploring breath holds. So what we're doing to the nervous system when we hold the breath is we're creating a moment of tension. We're putting the system under a little bit of pressure because, of course, the body is used to being able to take a breath whenever it wants to. So we are engineering on purpose a high stress moment, but one that we have complete control over. So this is prime for helping us train calm under pressure and being able to access that on demand. So we're going to start by just figuring out whatever the comfortable breath hold is. For this, you're going to want to make sure that you can look at a clock so that you can have an eye on how long you're holding your breath for. We're just going to get a baseline breath hold. So once you have a look at your clock, we should roughly all have the minute change at the same time. So right now, time just flipped. So we're going to inhale and hold. And please continue to hold your breath. And you're just, whenever you get to that point where it's too uncomfortable, just let it go. Return to your normal breath, but please make note of the time. Okay, so that's over 1 minute now. Okay, and that's 2 minutes. If you're still holding your breath, wow, that's impressive, but you don't have to. For everybody, we'll just come back to normal breathing. Okay, so how can we use a moment of pressure to our advantage to train being able to bring our nervous system under control? We create this artificial pressure environment, and then we're going to simply try to elongate the amount of time that we can hold our breath. Now, it takes time for this to work. You may have a little bit of increase today, but if you do this maybe once, twice a week over a period of a few months, you're going to get to the point where you can automatically, on demand, just bring yourself from a state of feeling under great deal of pressure and maybe anxiety to calm focus. That's the goal. So the first experiment we're going to run in holding the breath is we're going to use a mantra. The mantra is going to be the word calm. We're all going to use the same word to start. We recite it silently to ourselves while we're holding the breath. So again, you may want to make note of the time, but you don't have to. For now, we're just learning how to do this. So we don't need to worry too much about if this one is longer than the last one. We'll just see how it feels. And then closing your eyes. And it's getting to a deep rhythmical breath, maybe 3-part yogic breath, if that helps. And when you're ready, at the top of your next inhale, you're going to hold the breath and start to recite silently to yourself the word calm, calm, calm. And whenever you need to, you can just relax and return to normal breath. So that is over a minute, about a minute and a half. And we're just about at 2 minutes now. So we'll stop that practice, even if you're still holding your breath. Wow, that's amazing. We're all going to stop. And I'd just love to get some feedback from everybody. Were you able to continuously recite that word calm, was there any moment where your body was like, I'm not calm, and you kind of lost the mantra? Or any other feedback that you would like to share? What was that like for you guys?
For me, I noticed that when I tried to breathe in more through like the diaphragm, I was able to hold the breath longer than if I tried to breathe in with the lungs. I found that I was almost trying to like gasp for air at the end rather than just sort of letting it flow out.
Awesome. So a little bit more of a deep diaphragmatic breath helped you get a deeper breath and hold it longer. That's awesome. Any other insights, you guys? Anything else that happened? All right, lost the mantra a bit at the middle, Ronan says, but managed to hold it. That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to do this again, but now I'd like you to come up. Oh, also got another message here. Also sent from 50 seconds to 1 minute 50. Wow, with the mantra, went from 50 seconds to 1 minute 15. That's amazing. So immediately from one trial to the second, an improvement. That's cool. Okay, so now the word calm, I've given that to you. You could use that again, but I'd invite you to come up with an entirely different word. So how you can choose a word is think back to times where you've been under pressure in the past. And perhaps there's already a word that you find yourself using that just helps you settle down into that more calm state. Feel free to repurpose something like that, or you can come up with something completely original. And as you roll out this kind of practice over the course of a few months, I encourage you to experiment with different words, different mantras. So again, we will set up by finding an upright posture. And if you want to watch the time, you can. And then when you're ready, you're going to hold your breath at the top of the inhale and start to recite your mantra. Okay, we're about a minute and a half approaching 2 minutes. Okay, wherever you are, if you're still holding your breath, please return to breathing. So using a mantra can be incredibly powerful. Just a word that is a trigger that reminds your brain, okay, I've been in a high pressure situation before. I recognize this. I recognize by this word that I should calm down. The other way, so okay, using a mantra, just to explain, that is a distraction tactic. We're distracting ourselves away from the sensation of excitation of the nervous system or anxiety or panic. We're using something to direct our attention elsewhere. Another way that you can do this is by actually focusing all of your attention squarely on the sensation that's arising as you hold your breath. So you'll notice tension probably in the torso. You may feel constriction in your throat. You may notice your palms get sweaty. There's going to be all kinds of sensation. And when that sensation pops into your awareness, there's a tendency to recoil. Now, if you can, in that moment, just notice, oh, okay, I feel tension in my throat. I feel tightness in my belly. I'll completely understanding that at any moment, if it's too much, you can just take a breath. But see if it's possible to deliberately focus all of your attention onto the very sensation that's uncomfortable. And you may be surprised at what happens as a result. So we're going to do that one a little bit shorter just to try it out. And that will be our final breath practice. So again, getting settled. And when you're ready, at the top of the inhale, holding the breath. And then not turning away from, but turning towards the sensation that arises. And we're going to let that one go. So I'd love to get some feedback. What did you notice? Did anyone notice they could feel the heart pounding or could feel the pulse, maybe in the neck or in your ears? Any other sensations that really grabbed your attention? And what was it like when you deliberately focused your attention there? Right? No takers. So I can share that for me, what I really notice when I'm holding my breath and I am consciously focusing my attention, I really notice the heartbeat change. Yeah, Ronan says pounding heart, tension in chest, pressure in head. Yeah. So the first thing I know is the heartbeat. And if I'm able to be like, okay, the heartbeat is pounding, this is kind of freaky. If I can still commit myself to noticing it, I notice it, the heartbeat slows down. Versus if I keep going like, I don't like this feeling, it just keeps pounding. But there's a moment where if I center my attention on precisely that thing I'm trying to avoid, it shifts. Did anyone else notice something similar but different? Okay, we'll leave that there. So that's just a taste. Obviously, distraction is a lot easier than deliberately focusing your attention on the thing that's happening. Holding the breath is really hard for that second one. Oh, Ronan also says, feeling subsided a bit as you leaned into it. That's awesome. Yeah, but it's definitely harder to do the second thing, which is deliberately focus your attention on that thing that is super uncomfortable. But having both of those in your toolkit is going to be incredibly valuable because there are going to be times where distraction is just not an option, where you're going to be right here confronted with something that's stressful. And the only thing you can do is be present with it and pay attention to it. So holding the breath is really hard for this one. I really encourage you, next time you have an itchy foot or an itch anywhere on your body, to resist the temptation to scratch that itch and to just stop and focus all of your attention on that sensation, the feeling of the itch itself. And you may notice that actually just by paying attention, the itch goes away all by itself. And there is some science to back this up. Really, what sensation in the body is it's impartial. Your body is just trying to alert you to something that's going on within it or within your immediate environment. And so it's kind of like a little kid tugging on your sleeve saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And often if we recoil, that kid's just going to get louder and demand your attention more. Whereas if you focus your attention on whatever your body wants you to notice, it may just go away. This can be true of an itch. It can be true of a panic attack. We're retraining, we're reframing what it means to have those sensations arise in our bodies. So to complement that breath practice or meditation practice for tonight is called labeling meditation. So already previously, we've meditated focusing on sensations that arise in the body. And then we've focused on emotions and then thoughts. So we talked about it more, sensation and then thoughts and then judgment. Sorry, those were the three things. So 3 layers. And so our meditation practice tonight, we're going to sit in the role of the observer of all the things that arise in our minds. And we're just going to label what's there. So maybe you're meditating and actually you get a sensation of, oh, my back hurts. You're going to label it feeling, feeling, feeling. And you'll keep reciting that word feeling for as long as your mind is focused on that sensation in your back. And then if that switches to you having a thought about what you want to make for dinner, then you're going to change your recitation to thought, 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 thought. And then if that shifts to, oh man, I don't want to be thinking right now, that's a judgment. You're just going to say judgment, judgment, judgment. So that's the idea. We're simply labeling whatever we notice coming into our awareness. And by doing that and continuing to recite that label, the idea is we'll be able to hold our attention in the moment longer without getting pulled into any one of those sensations, thoughts, or judgments. So now, any questions about that? Anyone want clarity about that? Okay, so if not, again, we'll come into our meditative posture. Now we're not trying to manipulate the breath. We're simply closing the eyes. And starting to observe whatever's happening in your mind. Over the first part of our meditation, we're not trying to influence anything. We're not starting the labeling process just yet. We deliberately are softening our focus. We're inviting the mind to start projecting. And now, silently to yourself, please start labeling. And if you've become swept away, this is a reminder, come back to this moment and resume labeling whatever is happening in your meditation. And once more, for just the last couple minutes of our practice, if you've drifted away, come back and just pick up with whatever's happening in your awareness right now. And now releasing that meditation and just relaxing to open the eyes and come back into this moment. And just a final debrief on that. So, did anyone notice that they were in particular in one modality? Someone who is feeling, thinking, or judging? Did anyone find that they were just in one frame for a majority of the time? Or did you find that you shifted a lot? Like the minute you labeled one thing, it automatically transformed into something else, transformed into something else.
I felt like I was sort of got lost in time almost. As if time had sort of stopped just getting to that rhythm of just focusing on the breathing, that everything around me sort of like disappeared to the background noise. So I found it kind of
That's
interesting.
amazing. That's super cool. So that's actually what you're experiencing there is a mini flow experience where you focus your attention so intently on the present moment that your brain has started to turn off the prefrontal cortex a little bit so that it can become more efficient at achieving the task of labeling what's happening in the moment. That's really cool. Awesome for your first crack at it. anyone else find that they drifted? So you started labeling something, but then you kind of got lost in it and then stopped the process of labeling things as they arose. Okay, so if so, and that's why IQ reminding you to come back to the moment. It's really normal for that to happen. And why this happens is still a complicated question in the theory of mind. Like, what is even going on that it's possible for a mind to somewhat detach itself from itself and observe itself? That's going to sound really metacognitive and strange. But in these layers of attention, it's possible to actually remove yourself, not just from what's going on in your environment, but from what's going on inside your own mind and observe it as if you're an objective third party. But it's certainly not the norm. In our normal day-to-day waking life, we're getting caught up into different streams of attention. And so it's really normal in meditation that while you're trying to focus in the present, that something will happen. You'll think about a memory, and you can label that memory, okay, memory, 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 or thought, thought, thought. But at some point, you kind of get swallowed into it. So that's completely normal if that happens. With practice and using the label repetitively, that will actually help you hold that third party observer frame of reference for longer. As always, thank you so much for making time to practice with me and for being willing to explore entirely different ways of breathing and using your mind